Okay, so today's video is about multiplying and dividing integers, specifically positive and negative integers. And what I like to use is what I call tic-tac-toe. So here's your basic tic-tac-toe grid, the pound sign, or some of you guys call it hashtag. But for this question, it's going to be like a tic-tac-toe table. And the way you set it up is you're going to replace positive signs diagonally. Diagonally means this way. Or you can even put them diagonally the other direction. It's up to you. I'm just used to doing it this way. So those are going to be positive. And guess what's going to be the other part? Yep, negatives. So all the rest are going to be negatives. This right here helps me remember the rules when it comes to multiplying and dividing integers. But right here though we have multiplication, but in my next video I'll go over division as well. Pretty much the same concept. So right here, let's look at this first part. We have a positive and a negative and a negative. The way this is used is if your first number is a positive integer and your second number is a negative integer, your answer will be a negative integer. All right? Positive times negative gives me a negative. If I go further down, if I have a negative integer multiplied or divided by a positive, you get a negative answer. So negative number times positive number equals negative answer. But here's where it gets tricky. If you have a negative and you multiply by another negative, you end up with a positive answer. Yeah, so you know the old saying, two wrongs don't make a right? Well, in this case it does. Two negatives make a positive. So negative times negative equals positive. Or negative divided by negative equals positive. If you want to add further to the table, so that way you won't get lost or confused, you can add multiplication and division signals as well. And I guess I'll do that for this one. I'm going to add some multiplication and division signs to help me keep track of how I use these numbers. So let's say I have right here, let's make a different color. Positive times negative equals negative. Negative times positive equals negative. Negative times negative equals positive. Now while we're on this last part, let's go over some basic things. All right. Now just because a negative times a negative equals positive doesn't mean all of a sudden a positive times a positive equals a negative. Nope. All right. We're not going to just all of a sudden change rules from what you learned in elementary. What I mean is, all of a sudden 4 times 3, both numbers which are positive, are going to equal to a negative number. No, it's still going to be a positive 12. All right, so don't get confused by that. A lot of my students, when they start using this, they start thinking that 2 positives equals a negative. Nope, 2 positives still equals a positive. But for 2 negatives, that gives you a positive answer. So let's go back to the questions. And now that we have our table set up, you can start multiplying. So right here, we have a negative times a negative. A negative times a positive. Well, let's look at our table where we find where the negative number appears first and the positive number comes second. Negative, positive. Oh, there it is. So right there it tells me negative times positive equals negative. So over here, negative times positive is going to give me a negative answer. A negative 63. Let's go on to the next one. So right here we have a negative multiplied by another negative. So let's go back to our tic-tac-toe table. That's positive negative. That's negative positive. This is what I'm looking for. So remember, two negatives actually equals a positive. It's going to take a while to get used to that, but the more you practice, the more you remember. So two negatives equals a positive. So negative times negative gives me a positive 20. Now you can either put 20 or you can also put positive 20. All right, just give me a couple seconds. It's frozen. There we go. Takes a while sometimes. So what I was saying is you can either put 20 or positive 20. It doesn't matter. All right, it's still the same way. All right, so we're down to our last question. Now we're looking at right here a positive followed by a negative. All right, so we go back to our table over here and we look for where we see a positive followed by a negative, which is right there. This tells us if you multiply by a positive by a negative, you end up with a negative answer. So positive times negative gives me negative 5 times negative 12 gives me negative 60. And that's how I use the tic-tac-toe table. This also works for division.